Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk to you about uh, a, a presentation that was made by the general who leads the Defense Intelligence Agency of the United States government to the Senate Armed Services Committee. So, what I intend to do today is basically I will talk about the report, what it entails. They do this annually. They make these presentations to the Senate Armed Forces and Intelligence Committee. Uh, the whole report is obviously classified. Very few people are allowed to see this. But some of it is shared or declassified and shared publicly, and that's what we are going to see. So, this is the presentation that is made publicly, and the classified report is sent to those senators who have the clearance who have the clearance to see this. So that is what I'm going to show. But as people come in, I also wanted to share with you. Uh, Give me 1 second. I just need to. Uh, Give me 1 second, guys. So, as people come in, I also wanted to share that I did publish an article today, which is a bit critical of Prime Minister Modi's diplomacy. And this article was published. I will share it with you in the Diplomat. And if those of you who are interested, I can also share. So, this is the Diplomat article. So, you can see it was published today. Has Modi's diplomacy undermined India's national interests? And the questions that I'm asking is, given all the trips that he has made in the last 10 years to foreign countries, uh, uh, he's visited more than 70 countries, more than 80 trips or close to 100 trips has been made. Even to the United States alone, Prime Minister Modi has come 10 times to the US alone. And so the question really is how effective has that diplomacy been, given how little support India got from many countries during Operation Sindoor. But the goal of this conversation is to talk about the DIA's report. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this report with you, and I'm hoping that one of you will confirm that you're able to see this when I share the report with you. So, I'm going to share it now. There will be a 20-second lag. So, tell me if you are able to see this report or not. So, here I go. And this is the report. Uh, so let me go to the beginning of the report. Uh, so this is the 2025 Worldwide Threat Assessment Defense Intelligence Agency report presented by Lieutenant General Jeffrey Cruz, who is the director of DIA. And this, at least it claims that the information that it has is as current as of 11th May 2025, which means it includes information beyond what you could call as why is it you're not able to see it, right? No, can't see. It's a black screen. So let me, and now it has stopped showing. So let me try again and see if I can share it with you. It shows sharing here. Stop sharing. I'm going to start sharing again. Global threat to US. Okay, here it is. Are you able to see it now? Oh, great. Rohit says he's able to see it. There it is. No, you're not able to see it. Whew. I don't know why this happens. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link to the report. So you can follow with me as I make my observations about the report itself. So I'm going to stop sharing and I will share the link of the report here in the chat. So you can all watch, follow it as, or even just let me finish summarizing it, then we can have conversations, etc. So this is a report that was presented by the Defense Intelligence Agency's Director Jeffrey Cruz to the Senate committee that basically focuses uh, on intelligence and special operations. So this is the Armed Services Committee. I once testified to the Armed Services Committee, but this is a subcommittee on intelligence and special operations. And the goal of this report is basically to tell the senators who are involved that as to what is, and this is something very peculiar that I found very troubling about at least the declassified version of this report. It says that I'm privileged to lead this organization. I want to assure you that DIA officers who serve in more than 140 nations around the world. So the Defense Intelligence Agency, which, by the way, is the intelligence agency of the Department of Defense, is actually bigger than the Central Intelligence Agency, but its mandate is smaller. So the Defense Intelligence Agency is bigger. I think it even has a pretty huge budget, but its mandate is very small. It focuses primarily on defense issues, so capabilities of other countries, military exercises, who has how many soldiers, who has how many rockets, missiles, what is the level of sophistication, how much money are they spending on training, etc. So these are the things that the military intelligence agency is what is primarily occupied with. In the past, I mean, before World War II, it was only the military which had intelligence agencies, and we didn't have civilian intelligence agency like now America has the CIA. So, for example, the British has MI6 and MI5, which is actually the military intelligence is the acronym. So anyway, the Defense Intelligence Agency. So in this report, they're not providing much about the capabilities of other countries, but they are trying to do two things. They want to describe the global security environment, and they want to tell us what are the global threats. Now, this is to me because global threats to whom? Are they talking about global threats to the United States, or are they talking about global threats to the world? And in both sense, it does not do a pretty good job. So initially, it's also not a very comprehensive report. Obviously, this is the declassified one. It's just 45 pages. In the table of contents, if you look at the table of contents, I can tell you what they are clearly worried about. So from this report, while we may not get shall we say hard intelligence about how many jet fighters China has and how many of them are ready, how many of them can carry nuclear weapons, etc. We are not getting that kind of data. But to me, what is more revealing about this report is that it tells me what are the things that are happening in the world that the Department of Defense sees as a threat to US national security. So to the U.S. homeland and the southern border, so the U.S. The territory of the U.S. itself, the Department of Defense, the DIA sees five threats, and they are threats of missiles. I don't know why they think that the U.S. is facing a threat of missile. Who is going to fire missiles at the U.S. land and from where? They do see the number two threat to the U.S. is terrorism. The third threat they see is unmanned systems, drones. They also see that illegal migration and cartels and drug trafficking as a threat to the homeland security. I mean, these things are obvious. Narco terrorism is a big threat to the United States, is a big thing in most this part of the world in Latin America with drug smuggling and money across Mexico from Colombia and other places. And so there is an overlapping of the violence that are perpetrated by gangs who are indulging in drugs trafficking or sex trafficking or people trafficking in the illegal migration business. They are also kind of terrorists because of the egregious violence. I mean, they are more dangerous sometimes than even terrorists. The amount of violence they conduct every day. But it's interesting to see that the Department of Defense feels that there is a missile threat to the US, I think with all the development of hypersonic missiles by Russia and Iran and the Houthis, they feel that eventually somebody is going to get a missile that has the capacity to land right here in the United States. And that's why I think Donald Trump is talking about the Golden Dome, which will protect the United States, like the Iron Dome that is protecting Israel. So these are the five threats they see. But to me, what was interesting is, and this is across the board, when you look at the Tulsi Gabbard's assessment of threats to the United States, which she gave, I think, in March. And I did do a show on that, so you can scroll back and do a search and find out. They, they are saying that one of the biggest threats to the US is basically technology, and I'll talk about it. They're talking about technology in multiple ways, but they're also worried about how US competitors how US competitors are basically collaborating and cooperating. So that is a big threat to the US. And I find that very, very interesting that people are worried, especially in the United States, that Russia and China are collaborating, Russia and North Korea are collaborating. So in the assessment, um, the five threats that are identified to the United States, four are straight up from nation states, basically Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And then the fifth threat is basically terrorism. And they don't spend much time on terrorism. They only talk about ISIS and Al Qaeda as terrorist threats emanating mostly from Afghanistan. And they feel that the things that have happened recently in the Middle East might increase the threat of ISIS, whereas Al Qaeda is more or less emanating out of either Africa or Afghanistan, and they actually acknowledge that the Taliban is doing a very good job of suppressing both ISIS and Al Qaeda. So to me, that was very interesting to see that the United States is acknowledging that the Taliban are doing a reasonably good job of reducing the. ISIS is particularly capable of inspiring people to commit terrorist acts against the United States, and not just in the United States also, but also in Europe. So that is one issue. The second thing is they're talking about technology, and they're worried about technology at multiple levels. They are saying that increasingly more and more countries have these unmanned vehicles like drones capacity. They have missile technology, which is getting better and better and sophisticated. Plus, they are collaborating and cooperating among each other. So they feel that this is going to be a huge danger. They also talk about cyber terrorism, which is again another form of technology, and the emergence of AI and space related capabilities. So they see that the near future there is a threat from the space itself, and they feel that AI is going to be posing the United States a big threat. So as far as the United States is concerned, in terms of non-state uh, threats to the US, they're talking about terrorism, they're talking about artificial intelligence, they're talking about collaboration between states like Russia and China, between Russia and North Korea, between China and Iran. So they feel that the collaboration between these countries is a major threat to the United States. And then they also talk about narco-terrorism and terrorist activities, etc. So among the states related threats, they obviously talk about these four countries. And then they go region wise. And the region that they there's more details only about the Middle East and South Asia, and that's what I'm going to talk about, those two regions and the threats that they possess. And then I'll be happy to chat with you and take your questions and your comments. Uh, Now, talking about the regions, then they talk about the Middle East. It's very interesting. They obviously list Iran and Iran's proxies. They list Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis, and they talk about how Hezbollah and Hamas have been essentially degraded. Their capacities has been eliminated. They think that Hamas has very little capacity, and they feel that because Syria has completely changed and transformed, and Iran is completely out of Syria, Iran has lost the capacity to rebuild Hezbollah. So they don't think that Hezbollah is going to be able to arm itself in the near future, and Hezbollah is not going to be a threat to Israel, at least in the next 6 months. And they feel that it's going to be far more difficult for Iran to strengthen. They also feel that, interestingly, that since the ceasefire, there has been very little activity of Shia militias against the US in Iraq and other places. So, in a sense, Iran has maintained a ceasefire with the US, except the Houthis. But what is interesting to me is the section on Houthis. They do not talk about the ceasefire between the US and the Houthis, in which the Houthis basically told the US that, okay, we will not attack you, we'll attack everybody else, and we will definitely attack Israel. So this selective, there is no discussion of that at all, even though the report itself says that the report is current until May 11th. And they do talk about Operation Sindoor and the ceasefire between India and Pakistan in the report. So the report is, at least, there must have been some additions made on the May 10th. And this report was presented around 22nd, I think, of May. But to me, that was very interesting that they left out of this discussion the ceasefire agreement between the United States and the Houthis, especially after the first thing that Hexet, the Secretary of Defense, did was to attack the Houthis, even though J.D. Vance didn't want to. And if we know that all from the signal leak that happened, and all of their discussions were published on the Atlantic magazine. But when they talk about threats, it's not very clear whether they're talking. So, for example, when you look at the entire section on South Asia, so they have one section on Afghanistan, one section on Pakistan, one section on India. They don't talk about Bangladesh at all. So they don't see Bangladesh as being threatened. So they're not talking about threats to the countries in the region. So there are no threats to Bangladesh, even though we are talking about all the stuff that is going on with the Rohingyas. Now there is a Rohingya militia inside Bangladesh, and then there are other militias right across the border in Myanmar who are threatening Bangladesh's security, but there's no discussion of that. They talk about the Taliban, in which they obviously acknowledge that the Taliban is doing some good in suppressing ISIS as well as Al Qaeda, who are obviously threatening the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. And they do acknowledge that there is terrorism in Afghanistan and Pakistan while talking about terrorism in South Asia, but they do not talk about terrorism emanating from Pakistan or from Afghanistan. So they're talking about terrorism happening internally, but no cross border. So there's no discussion or acknowledgement of any cross border terrorism at all targeting regional countries. When they do talk about South Asia, they say, yes, there is a lot of worry about terrorism, but their focus seems to be still on ISIS and Al Qaeda. There's no mention of Lashkar-e-Taiba or Jaish-e-Mohammed, etc. So anti-India terrorist groups are not on the map of the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. Defense and Intelligence agencies. They are not even collecting information, I guess. And they don't feel the need to talk about them as a threat at all. But they are definitely still focused on ISIS, Al Qaeda, and the Taliban. Then, when they talk about India, it's very interesting. They do not talk about threats to India. They just talk about India's tensions with China. They mention the Galwan, and they also talk about Arunachal Pradesh. And they are more interested in talking about how India is trying to become Atmanirbhar. And they talk about the two kinds of missiles that India is developing. Uh, and to me, that was interesting that they are more interested in talking about India's military capabilities. And they say that India is trying its best to become a world power, and India will continue to acquire weapons under Prime Minister Modi. It will strengthen its defense infrastructure. But it does not talk about Operation Sindoor, does not talk about Pahalgam, etc. So to me, that was a bit surprising. Are they talking, if they're talking about threats to the US and its allies, or just to the US? Uh, and so that was a little bit of a troubling and disturbing thing. Uh, but what is also interesting, when they were talking about the Middle East, they had nothing, absolutely nothing to say about the Gaza war, the war in Gaza. They talk a lot about the Russia-Ukraine war, and they feel that throughout the year of 2025, Russia will continue to dominate. There will be slow gains, both in terms of territory that Russia will gain and the military advantages that it will gain. They feel that it will be slow and incremental, but at a very high cost, which means Russians are going to lose a lot of weapons, and they will lose a lot of tanks. They already lost 3,000 tanks and 250 planes and 10 ships, according to this report. And so they feel that they're going to lose a lot of weapons, and they have had casualties of nearly 700,000. Casualties means both fatalities, which is deaths, and injuries. So if somebody gets shot in the shoulder, it's a casualty. Somebody gets shot in the head and dies, it's a fatality. So when we say 700,000 casualties, we don't mean 700,000 dead. What we mean is 700,000 soldiers, where Russian soldiers have injured. And so they say that if the US doesn't intervene in that war, then Russia will gain. But what is interesting is they acknowledge that China is expanding globally. They pay a lot of attention to China's military activities in Tanzania, near Taiwan, and near Philippines. So they feel that China is beginning to project its power globally, even though all China did was send 1,000 soldiers to Tanzania. There's no discussion of Chinese technology, or did the Chinese shoot JC-10 shoot down a Rafale or not. That is all not there. I think probably we will see in some interim report that comes out later, or next year's defense intelligence report, unless the Senate Committee on Intelligence and special operations asks them to make a special presentation and a hearing. But when it comes to Pakistan, this is what a lot of Indian media has already reported, is that when they talk about India, they talk only about what India is trying to do militarily, as to how it's acquiring weapons, how it's trying to build. They use the word medium range ballistic missiles, which are, they mention five and one. So there's a series of missiles that India is developing. And so they talk about India's efforts to become Atmanirbhar, made in India, or make in India project with regards to defense. But they don't talk about threats to India. But when they talk about Pakistan, this is very interesting. They make it clear that Pakistan sees India as an existential threat, which I found very interesting. That this clearly shows that there is a lot more military to military comparison, contact, and communication between the US and Pakistani militaries, because this is the point of view that Pakistan sees India as an existential threat. By existential threat, it means that Pakistanis think that India might eliminate their existence, might make Pakistan go away. And that is why they are rebuilding their nuclear capabilities. They are improving the safety measures with regard to their nuclear capabilities, uh, etc. So to me, that was very interesting to see as to how Pakistan's perceptions of what is threatening Pakistan. They also talk about the cross-border terrorism from Afghanistan to Pakistan, from Tehreek-e-Taliban, Pakistan. So in the South Asia section, while they do not talk about any threats to India, they are talking about how India is competing with China, and how it is developing both maritime and land-based and air-based capabilities to match China's military capabilities. But they do not talk about the role of the US, or the role of US military intelligence in cooperation with India. I think those kind of things they have reserved for, shall we say, they have kept it for the classified version of the report. But I was surprised there were typos in the report. There are typos you can see in the report when you read. I have shared the link in the chat. So if you can just click it, you can see this is declassified and public. What I feel is that I wish that in India too, they will publish reports like this, which talk about the regional security environment, the challenges that countries in South Asia, at least if not a global report, but at least a report limited to security challenges in the South Asian region or in the Pacific, would be very interesting. It would give us an insight into how India sees its role in global security, and how India sees its neighborhood and the threats that they possess. Like, for example, I mean, we are hearing a lot of political statements about Pakistan, But from a defense point of view, how do the how does the Indian Defense Department or Indian military see Pakistan's capabilities? How much of a threat does it pose to India or to the region? How big a threat is the Taliban's military capabilities? What happened to the 20, like, I think 17 or $27 billion worth of weapons that the US had left behind in Afghanistan? Where have those weapons gone? And things like that. So uh, I was a little disappointed with this report, but as I said, the disappointment is because we are not privy to the full report. We are seeing only what has been declassified for the purpose of the public hearing in the Senate. But regardless of the details, what is clear is that I'm going to summarize exactly what the US is worried about, and then I will take your questions. So the US primarily is worried about the changing technological environment, cyber terrorism, artificial intelligence and its role, development of hypersonic missiles, development of unmanned drones and missiles. Capabilities. They feel that even the US borders and US land itself is being threatened by missiles and these unmanned vehicles. They are worried about non state actors such as narco terrorism, drug smuggling, mass migration. They are obviously worried about terrorism, but they only talk about ISIS and Al Qaeda in that. They refer to the terrorist attack in New Orleans a few months ago to say that ISIS is still capable of inspiring people locally to commit acts of terrorism. And then when they move and talk about states, they clearly identify this is the old, Russia, China are global threats, and North Korea and Iran are regional threats. But the thing that is worrying them more about this is the collaboration and cooperation between these countries. And so they see collaboration between Iran and Russia, for example. Uh, Iran is now selling drones to Russia, and Russia is might give Iran Su-35s or some advanced aircrafts. So these are the things that are worrying the US. Collaboration and cooperation. So the collaboration between China and Russia, between Russia and North Korea. Apparently, North Korea has sent 10,000 soldiers to fight with Russia uh, against the Ukrainians. So these are the things that are worrying them. And they clearly are also worried with India's growing military capabilities, both domestic and the ones that they are buying. So these are the things that are happening. Uh, so that is all that is in that report. I have shared the link to the report, so you can see that link there. And then we will talk now. I'll be happy to take your questions, and I'll be happy to answer them. There is a little bit of a lag, but nevertheless, I'll be happy to answer your questions as we go forward. So please feel free to shoot. I mean, shoot your questions. Yeah, while talking about defense issues, I shouldn't be using words, phrases like that. So let's go. Uh, so sorry, Nishant, I have sent the link so you can see that link right here where you said nope. Below that, I have provided the link so you can browse it at your own convenience. Pakistan never deployed HQ-10 in Operation Sindhu. Spreading nonsense about its failure just so you don't know what you're talking about. Well, we haven't fully received entire intelligence of what weapons were deployed and used. So, for example, I'm also curious as to why India has not used F-16s and why India did not use Tejas, why Pakistan didn't use F-16s in this battle. Those are the questions that are there to be asked. Uh, and then Trump's foreign policy on China and Russia is like a toddler with a crayon, constantly scribbling, never consistent. I mean, you're right there. Even the Chinese are making a lot of fun, and so are the Russians, especially the Russian uh, Russians on Twitter were making fun of Donald Trump, saying, "Well, he has made his final statement and given his warning until he changes it tomorrow." And so they were making fun of Donald Trump. He was struggling to look tough, but does not want to be tough with, unfortunately, with with Russia. Rohit Narang says it does seem odd that Canada isn't mentioned in the report, especially given the strong statements from Kash Patel and Donald Trump about the northern border. Yes, so Kash Patel is and Donald Trump are highly politicized. So far, I think that Hexet has not fully politicized the Department of Defense. So I think the next year's report will be echoing a lot more of what Donald Trump is saying. And I think most of the intelligence gathered here, even though it's nearly 4 months, 5 months since the Trump administration, I think some of the data that was collected was by the previous administration. And maybe the soldiers are less politicized, so they are more focused on real threats, because everybody understands that the Canadian border is not that big a threat to the United States, either in terms of human trafficking or in terms of drug trafficking. Yes, there are opioids going there, and there is only 1% or 2% of the opioids that come into the US come from Canada. And so in that sense, Canada's border is not as big a threat as Trump makes it out to be. SHR, what's your view on how would Pakistan manage China and US relations? I mean, that is really very interesting that it has been far more successful in balancing China and US than, say, India has been in balancing Russia and the West. Even now, one of the reasons that is given for lack of support for India from Western countries, G7 countries, during the current war with Pakistan during Operation Sindoor, some Indian experts are saying that it is because India was not supporting the West in its war against Russia. And therefore, the West is not supporting India in its war in Pakistan, which means that India has not managed this tension between having good relations with both. In my article, in the Diplomat, I will share the link here for those of you who are interested in reading. I will also post it in the post section of my website. I also make this point that India has not done good in terms of alignments. So India went for a multi alignment policy. This is the new way of maintaining its strategic autonomy. But in the multi alignment, it ended up with no allies, at least. So that is the my answer to your question. Pakistan is able to manage China and U.S. relations because the U.S. feels that Pakistan is like a baby that needs babysitting. And if China is willing to do the babysitting, then the US is saying, well, good for us. We don't want to do it. China is doing our job for us. So as long as Pakistan China relations don't directly threaten the US, I think Pakistan is going to find it easy to manage both of them. Mark Welber, welcome. I see your name often. The reason for not using HQ10, okay, I'm not getting into that discussion. What's your take on Sindoor 2.0? Is it going to happen? Well, SKS 18169, in order for there to be Sindoor 2.0, Sindoor 1.0 has to end, isn't it? So, as far as Prime Minister Modi's current speeches, he's talking to people in Gujarat and other places. From his speeches, all he's conveying is that there's just a pause. There's no end. Sindoor 1.0 has not ended. I mean, his message to Pakistan was, we are still at war with you. Just press the pause button, and that pause button can be easily removed. So it's like saying that you're driving a car, you've not turned the engine off. You just are driving, but you have now just stopped, and maybe you're still in gear. And the car is still in gear and not in neutral. So there, there might be another episode. So if there is another trigger, which means if there is a terrorist attack, I think Modi will be under a lot of pressure to right away respond, because then everybody is going to ask him. So you are saying that the Sindoor operation is still on. So are you going to retaliate? So that is the new normal from India's point of view. That anytime there is a terrorist attack, if India thinks it's connected to Pakistan, India will immediately strike against Pakistani targets. They could be terrorist targets, they could be military targets. So that is the new normal that India is presenting to Pakistan. It's not going to be like in the past. Adil Ghausuddin, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. What's your take on de dollarization and multipolar world with the rise of global south? So, Ghausuddin, I don't think the world is multipolar at all. The way the world is dancing to Donald Trump, the way everybody is running here to the United States to make a bilateral agreement, except the Russians and the Chinese. Nobody else has ignored India. Even Narendra Modi is quiet and not responding to Donald Trump. He's getting Dr. Jaishankar and others to respond because if he says something, he could really upset Donald Trump. So the behavior of most countries in the world suggests that they don't see the world as multipolar. They want the world to be multipolar. Countries like India and France and maybe even Japan want the world to be multipolar so that their stature rises. I don't think it is. Adil, I wrote an article for the India World. I will see if I can. Uh, India's World. If I can find the link, I will share it with you here. I made a whole argument as to why this is not a multipolar world very clearly. And so hopefully you will be able to enjoy this. I'm going to leave this article here in the chat. Uh, India's World is India's emerging foreign policy magazine. Arnab Sen Gutta Khansa, why does rare earth matter only in areas of conflict? Isn't there enough peaceful countries with rare earth? Yes, like Canada and Greenland. At least there's suspicion that there is a lot of rare earth material. You know, everybody seems to have rare earth material. China has, Indonesia has the biggest supply of zinc. Canada has rare earth materials. Greenland has. Afghanistan has. Pakistan has. India discovered a lot of lithium in the Kashmir region. I mean, there's so many places. It doesn't look very rare to me to begin with. I think that we haven't done a good job of mining it so far. So there are peaceful countries with rare earth material, but it is kind of, I think the conflict allows countries like the United States and China to take advantage of these countries which are in conflict and go after their rare earth resources. Look, there is no peace between Russia and Ukraine. There is no ceasefire. The US is not sending extra weapons or money to Ukraine, but guess what? They got the rare earth material deal. Yes, the deal is not as favorable to the US as we thought, in the sense that the 200 billion that the US has already spent in Ukraine's defense is not coming back. But going forward, the US will have a stake in the rare earth materials which are in Ukraine. So if Ukraine was not in a state of conflict, I don't think it would have made that deal. So I think that is why they are focusing on countries which are in a state of conflict. Samar Abbas, do you think Shashi Tharoor's comments on Trump will damage the Indian cause? Not really. I'm sorry to say this entire nautanki is the word I want to use. This tamasha that the Indian Ministry of External Affairs is doing with these 7 delegations. Who attended the Shashi Tharoor's presentation in New York? Nobody from the Trump administration was there. There were some think tank fellows from based in New York. I'm just 2 hours away from New York, and they did not bother to advertise reasonably well. There was so much confusion whether they will come to the US first or go to Guatemala and then come back to the US last. So there was nobody. In fact, if you do a search about Shashi Tharoor's speech in the Indian consulate in New York, some of the Indian media is reporting as the US consulate, but no, it's India's consulate in New York. You will see there is no media coverage in the US at all. Nobody in the US is giving a damn as to what Shashi Tharoor said, or they're paying attention to him at all. It's only the Indian media because they're trying to make Modi look good and trying to salvage Modi's image because of the tremendous disaster that the diplomacy has been. Nobody is paying attention to these people. I was listening to Asaduddin Owaisi's speeches in Bahrain and Kuwait. I think in Bahrain he spoke in English, and some of the stuff he was saying in Saudi Arabia are in Urdu. So who are these Middle Eastern leaders and politicians and intellectuals who listen and follow Urdu? So even there, they're talking to the Indian diaspora. This is just for the Indian diaspora, I think, that these missions are going. Kamal Aydin, good evening, Professor Shah. What about Turkey Pakistan relations? Oh, wow. I was very surprised to see the photograph of Shehbaz Sharif and Erdogan holding hands, and Shehbaz Sharif coming to Istanbul and thanking Turkey. For Shehbaz Sharif, this is like a good domestic press. I can guarantee you that if any American leader had said, "Oh, Narendra Modi is such a great leader. Look at his leadership during Operation Sindoor," and then Indian media would have been just going with that all day, wall-to-wall coverage on that one statement. It could be from anybody. So similarly, Shehbaz Sharif has now got this opportunity to say, "Look, a country like Turkey, member of NATO." Member of G20 is supporting us and is an ally. To me, what is perplexing is that why is Turkey so committed to the Pakistani cause? Is it because it is anti-India, or is it because it is pro-Pakistan? And I think I'm researching that question as to what this is, because it is puzzling. Because I've traveled to Turkey more than 20 times, and um, there's a lot of respect for India among the Sufis in the Turkish community in Turkey, but there's not much interest in India at all from a geopolitical perspective. Turkey is very Europe looking and Middle East looking now, and but for Pakistan, it is obviously something for them to brag about, that an important country is supporting us so strongly. SHR, you are perfectly right. That was the last paragraph of mine in the diplomacy. India went for multi alignment. We are with everybody. Well, it's like saying we will not marry anybody, we will date everybody. Great. Nobody showed up. You were stood up during Operation Sindhu. You didn't have a date. It's like saying you went to the prom alone. India went to the prom alone. But Pakistan had two dates, China and Turkey. They were with Pakistan during it. China was providing real live, real time intelligence. So, yes, India's multi alignment foreign policy with all the talk, and now big talk, India has become the fourth biggest economy. They think all of this is for domestic consumption. Yeah, in the world is not very impressed. So go and look at the media. Last week, India became the fourth biggest economy. How many major newspapers in the world, take any part of the world, has covered it? Look at the coverage of Operation Sindoor in Nikkei, the Japanese main newspaper. It was not very pro India. China and Indonesia signed a deal. Finance B, that's interesting. I didn't see it. I want to know whether Indonesia canceled the Rafale deal to sign a JC10 or JC30 deal with China. I'm waiting to see what happens with that. Thank you, Rohit, for watching. I deeply appreciate. For those of you who are from India, or those of you who like Hindi, I am going to be doing a Hindi version of this on my other channel, which is visible in India at 11 o'clock US time, which means I'm going to stop in 10 minutes because I need a little break and I need to eat something before I do that. Saurav Pandey, good morning, Khan Saab. Your take on Asim Munir presenting the China drill photo as a victory photo to Pakistan. Yeah, Asaduddin Owaisi apparently trashed that a lot, and I think it was in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I think these are some of the mistakes that are done by the aides. Okay, this tells you that the people who are providing Asim Munir with material for their speeches and their stuff are idiots, and they're not doing their homework properly, and that is something that you have to be very, very careful about. It's a sign of incompetence, no doubt. If you were Indian Prime Minister, what would you do after Pahalgam? Oh wow, that's a very tough question. Uh, India came out very arrogantly, Arnab, after Pahalgam. Go back and see, I did a show in which I talked about how India did two things after Pahalgam. One, they invited all the people of foreign embassies in Delhi to come to the Ministry of External Affairs, and India made a presentation to them. And then Narendra Modi made phone calls to various leaders of the world. I don't know whether, if he had spoken to Trump, obviously they would have taken it. The fact that he didn't speak to Trump, hasn't spoken to Trump since February, I think, is telling. So apparently Modi said that we are not going to justify our actions. We are not taking your permission. We are not trying to explain to you our action. We're just informing you that we're going to go across the border and kick Pakistani ass for what happened in Pahalgam. And I think that is the reason why India did not get any support from most of the countries in the world, because India did not present at least some plausible case that Pakistan was directly involved in Pahalgam, because the rest of the world reads reports and does believe that there is an insurgency in Kashmir, which is down now, but it could be just a domestic case. So India had to do that. So if I was the Prime Minister of India, I would have sent this delegation that the Modi is sending after Operation Sindoor, before Operation Sindoor. I would have sent these delegations, not to stupid, I mean, sorry, I apologize, not to small countries like Guyana, which actually has a Muslim head of state, and to small countries like Sierra Leone, but I would have sent a delegation to G7, to BRICS, to the United States, Russia, and maybe even to China, and say, look, this is the evidence we have. This is why we believe Pakistan is responsible, and now we're going to take action. And I can tell you that the response from the rest of the world would have been very different than what it was this time around. Anyway, so I don't see any more questions. Oh, I forgot to tell you that I'm open to taking super chats and super thanks. If you're feeling generous, go ahead with it. But thank you for watching Khanversations. Please stay tuned. I want to do another show tomorrow. I'm busy with the grading. That's why I didn't do a show yesterday. Grades are due at midnight today. I finished one class. I still have to do one more class. But what I will be doing tomorrow is taking a look at Muhammad Yunus of Bangladesh, who describes that Bangladesh is like in a state of war. That's how he described the country that he's governing. So apparently there is a lot of turmoil going on. There were some Bangladeshi viewers who were telling me that there is no turmoil in Bangladesh, everything is hunky-dory. But now even Muhammad Yunus is saying that there's a war-like situation and circumstances in Bangladesh. To me, that sounds like turmoil. And it also appears that they say that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I think power has corrupted Muhammad Yunus a little bit. He wants to stay in power for 5 more years. So there is this new slogans that I will talk to you about Bangladesh. So thank you for watching Conversations. And I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care. Oh yes, Rohit. A lot of use of Chat GPT in the answers. They are very irritating, because Chat GPT is not yet smart enough to write answers to the questions and to the papers that I ask. So Chat GPT answers were very general, very vague, lots of good words, but not. They are not able to connect facts with insights, with analysis yet. Maybe by next year, Chat GPT will get better. But yes, I could clearly look at the answers and tell who is using Chat GPT and who is not. Take care, guys. Bye.